I'm just going to finish working on my answers then. Lastminute.com.
Well, it's a good opportunity.
I'm just going to finish working on my answers then. Lastminute.com.
Well, it's a good opportunity.
I'm just going to
Will you let
finish
us know, Liam,
working
when
on
we
my
can
answers
go?
then. Lastminute.com.
He's muted. Well, it's a good opportunity.
Presumably, John, you're going to do an introduction before we actually start, because nobody's heard what this is going to work like or anything else. We'll also give people a chance to log on before any of us actually start talking.
Yeah, I'm in the hands of Liam, obviously, and what's happening there.
Could we also have a complete running list as well, so know when to expect ourselves in the order?
Yeah, I can happily do that for you, if that would be useful.
Please.
Mike, we've identified, as we know, followed by Craig, Tony, Jason, Kate, Mary, James, Carl, John, and James, and we don't know about Wes Guest, who wasn't on that initial list of participants who'd actually joined in. So
do you have a preference in the order of the Jameses, please?
oh, I say two. I'm sorry. Then I have James Convoy after Mary, and then James Round after John.
Okay, thanks.
So I've done the introduction I was going to do. Is there anybody who wants to pick anything up from that now, or are we ready to go?
John,
Okay.
I think it might be helpful to just repeat the questions, because if people didn't hear it at all, otherwise we'll have to repeat the questions every time we speak.
Okay, I'm happily do that for you. Okay, so number one is, what does the candidate think that British Skydiving should be doing regarding diversity and inclusion within the sport? 2, what can you bring to the board that is unique? What personal and professional qualities and values would you bring to the role? 3, if elected, how do you think British Skydiving can be made more visible? And 4, what current issue is most important to you and/or influenced your decision to run for council? Okay, Mike, are you good to go?
Yeah, I'm good to go. Thanks for giving me the chance to stand for election. It's quite good to be able to do that. The first question about what do I think that British Skydiving should be doing about diversity and inclusivity. It's an interesting one about this. I mean, personally, I'm against discrimination in all of its forms, and that actually includes positive discrimination as much as anything else. So I actually don't think British Skydiving particularly should play a role in trying to balance diversity proactively. I think it's up to people whether or not they want to skydive, and the danger of trying to force particular demographics to come and join us to increase the membership that way, we wind up disenfranchising people who otherwise would be members. So we have to do that. What we absolutely have to do is ensure that we are compliant with the Equalities Act 2010, and that all protected categories that are covered under that are properly treated by British Skydiving. We need to have a proper legal review on that to understand whether or not the policies and the rules that we got in place are compliant. Otherwise, because we've got to protect ourselves against any potential legal action in the future or any criticisms that could come down there. I think that's quite important. I personally don't think we are compliant within there, and there's various reasons why that some people are quite aware of. An outside legal team looking at that would be quite valuable. I think what we have to do, though, as well, is we need to think about what's happening, who we are and what we represent. An awful lot of the problems that may occur, especially when I think about harassment and alarm of people and potentially misogynist behaviour, which we do see, those happen on drop zones. They're away from the eyes of British skydiving quite regularly and possibly not visible to us ourselves. So finding some kind of independent whistleblowing capability so people are able to report those, and if we do so a large number of those things happening, have both the investigative capabilities for it, but also, is there a documented discipline and redress program within British Skydiving? I don't believe there is. Sometimes it seems a little bit kangaroo court, that, you know, that side of things there. So a documented process would also be useful. The second question about what can I bring to the board that's unique? Don't think I particularly bring a great deal that's unique, in all fairness. I think there's some really excellent candidates available to vote for. I think what I do bring is years and years of being a cynic. I'm always looking for the unintended consequences of decisions and of change. It's not that I'm against change or don't like rules. Absolutely, I see those as vital. But decisions that are made frequently have unintended consequences. An example I give of that is, you know, the really positive change that was made regarding the FS capabilities and getting people in the sky with their friends better, which was introduced this year. I absolutely believe that was marvellous. But an unintended consequence of that has very much been that we've now got a huge amount of members who don't have a mechanism to get out of the 3 people groups that they're in, because the next phase of that wasn't launched at the same time. So different organisations, different chief instructors have got different rules for how they're going to allow people to jump in larger groups. That's an unintended consequence. A lot of my work in life is about managing complex projects. That's the same for everybody, I think, on here. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. But looking at the conflicting interests of people within those projects is probably a big area that I would see. And I guess that the way that my personal life and my personal working life is, I'm very much more outcome orientated than task orientated. So I'm looking at the eventual deliverable that we're looking for rather than the individual tasks. So able to not get completely focused on what we're doing, more on what we're trying to achieve. The third question about what do I think could be done to make British skydiving more visible? I thought this was a great question, but I didn't really understand what it meant. More visible to whom? And why do we want to be more visible? I mean, when I think about the kind of visibility the sport got after, you know, the fabulous NFTO came back from the World Championships with their medals, with winning it, we had coverage on BBC News. We had an ITV News for that. We saw that with the indoor skydiving as well in Basingstoke. We got some really good news coverage in the national press, all really, really good. So you could kind of say competitions breed visibility and get us publicity. But I think we've got a more fundamental problem, which we've got to address before we start thinking about the wider visibility. British skydiving, it just isn't seen as relevant to a large number of skydivers in the UK. Candidly speaking, I think a lot of people just think of British skydiving as an insurance broker who publishes a magazine. They don't actually understand what British skydiving is doing. And so we need to address that. We need to get the membership more involved with what British skydiving can do. Council meetings should be open. Council meetings should be able to be addressed by members. Members should be able to put questions to every single council meeting. And the same with the committees. They should be open. Local councils, local authorities now are very, very open in how they deal with things. We have got to become more relevant to the membership. That is an area where the visibility needs to be. What current issue is most important to me and influenced my decision to stand? Here we go. It's really simple, actually, and it's not a new issue. I think we've got a real problem with membership stagnation. Every year, roughly the same amount of people join skydiving, come into skydiving, and leave skydiving, and our membership just doesn't grow. I looked back at council minutes and publications. It was even mentioned in the mag some 10 years ago that this is a problem for British skydiving. And it's going to get, you know, it's not, yeah, it's not getting any worse, not getting any better. We have got to look at how we deal with it. How do we make sure that more people become skydivers than stop being skydivers every year? This should be something that the council is looking at and investigating. And it comes down to just simple things like we do 50,000 temporary memberships. There's 50,000 people do a tandem a year. How do we get more of those people to do an AFF course? How do we get those people who get their A licenses able to go on and get their B license and C licenses? In the old days, a lot of people talk to me about the old days. I'm not an old skydiver. I only got my license 2 years ago. But a lot of people talk to me about the old days of skydiving and how somebody at the DZ would take somebody under their wing. DZs have changed. They're now commercial enterprises. Maybe we need to think about British skydiving forming a mentorship program where we take people who are B, C licenses, not instructors, not looking to do coaching and instructing, but just helping new skydivers navigate themselves around being licensed skydivers after that sort of stop. You're now no longer a student, sort yourself out. Let's turn around and think about formalising a program where we could make that work. John, that's me.
Thank you. Spot on almost. Good. Okay, so moving onwards, Craig, I think it's your pitch now.
Can you hear me?
Yes, hear you clearly.
Thank you. I've changed the first question to what more should we be doing? I think it's a shame the questions aren't being asked face to face. I'd love to know what people are aware of what we're doing already. I'm a bit embarrassed that I'm going for Mary here because I'm going to be stealing a lot of her thunder, and hopefully I'm not going to be taking the shine away too much from her. But that's been one of her major focuses this year. Much credit should be given to her, as well as the other members of her committee, directors Buzz, Kate, independent Joanne, and our volunteer Brick. A big part of diversity is showing the change that you want to be in order to increase participation in underrepresented groups. So that involves ensuring showing that across our publications, pictures are not from the majority makeup of the membership, and everything we produce from our forms to our manuals are inclusive. And this is work that's already being undertaken. I don't really want to make this about other candidates, but I do have to disagree with Mike on what he said there, because you know, we have an issue, and we do need to address that. It needs a bit of help because people do what they see, and if they don't see it, they don't do it. So we need to help that along the way. The committee are working on a 5-year plan. and it's a great bunch of people who are really well suited to the task, and I offer whatever support I can to them. I have enough to do on council, so I'm not going to get too involved in that. It's in safe hands there. If there's one thing I can do, I think the tracking, there's more to be done there, so I can offer technical skills assistance with that one. And personally, I will also try to actively demonstrate the values that we are outputting from that committee, and I offer myself as an ally for anyone that needs it. What makes me unique and what are my personal qualities? Is anyone really unique? What makes me unique on the board is my experience and knowledge of British skydiving, I guess. I've been a member since 1997. I took an early interest in the management of the sport and did a couple of years on council in the early noughties. I'm really aging myself now, so apologies to all the Gen Z and millennials out there. I am still quite in touch, I hope. I've been on the board continuously since 2008 in a variety of roles: council member, committee chair, vice chair, chair, delegate to the Aero Club and International Skydiving Commission, as well as team manager, head of delegation at international competitions, as well as competing internationally, instructing, tried everything, jack of all trades, master of not too many. So yeah, it's just a wealth and breadth of my experience, I think. As for professional qualities or personal qualities, I do try to be fair and balanced to all. Considering all sides of a debate, sometimes that does end up with me sitting on a fence. But we have such passionate people on the board and involved in the sport that even the most diverse and opposing opinions can be quite persuasive. So it is really eye-opening being on the board and experiencing those opinions. I bring my technical experience as a lifelong software developer to the board and to the association. That's one of the things that got me into it originally. Especially now I work for a mutual building society that is run for the benefit of its members, just like British Skydiving. So there are lots of parallels there with my professional life. Visibility. This is a tricky one. It is something that we've been trying to do for years, and we have to appreciate that we are a niche sport and a privileged sport. I do think we are already pretty visible. There aren't that many people out there in the public that don't know they couldn't walk in off the street and do a tandem. I think it's fairly well published. So I'm not sure the problem is visibility so much, but rather retention and getting those who have done one jump to do more. That's what we really need to crack, but it's a perennial problem. I guess these days visibility means social media, keeping up to speed with the latest trends, and influencing is the big thing these days. So maybe there's more to be done in that area. However, we do have paid communications resource on staff who is far more qualified in these areas than most, and it's certainly a lot of the board as well. So a challenge on the board is, how much do we get involved in the day-to-day side of things? That's why we have a paid staff, so we have to trust their expertise and their professionalism, and let them get on with it. But I think there's certainly room there. It's a perennial question on the board: strategy versus execution, which has to be balanced with a volunteer board. It's often been a strategy of the association that winning medals at World Meets is what brings attention to our sport. Mike mentioned it earlier. However, is it significant with such a niche sport? Not to mention, it takes a lot of investment to achieve medals at world level. And in these post-pandemic times, we are operating at a deficit as an association, and we're struggling to fund our competitors at the moment beyond entry fees. The elite, the competitions committee are looking at changing how we fund our competitors and focusing more on grassroots and participation to try and address that. It's a long plan, and time will tell. Last question: what current issue made me decide to run for council? Well, for me, it's deciding to stand again for council. I said it in my candidate statement. I still think there's lots to be done. Being on a committee does slow things down, so it's more difficult to get things done. I came onto the board many years ago with plans to do big changes, and over the years I've adjusted my expectations to try to achieve lots of smaller wins, smaller gains, and because of that, it just takes longer. So there's still more to do.
2 minutes, Craig.
Thank you, John. I'm almost done. I want to see it through to the end of my term limit. This is my last time standing for council. After this, I will be required to stand down for a period of 3 years due to our articles of association that were changed due to good governance. So yeah, I don't want to quit, not a quitter. If I can, I would pick 2 issues that are important to me, just to finish up on. One is, and I said these in my statement as well, but I will reiterate them in case people haven't read them. One is seeing through the transition that we will be undergoing next year, the restructuring that is happening. Tony, our COO, is planning to retire next year, and we'll be taking on a CEO, which will be a different focus with our leadership there, our senior leadership team. And I believe my experiences will be helpful to help with that transition. And finally, I see sustainability of our sport as an existential threat that we need to address more and more. And that is another big issue that I'll be focusing on. I'm done, John. You can have a minute back. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good. And next up is Tony.
That's me. So, good evening. I have no idea how many people are listening to this, but I guess this is really not for us. This is for the members to get to know us and know, on the basis on which we're putting ourselves forward. I'll go through the questions they are. So the first one is about diversity and inclusion. I think this is a challenge that faces all organisations and one that needs focus in order to be effectively addressed. It is recognised and included in the British Skydiving 5-year plan, so I believe that there is some focus intent. It would be nice to think that inclusivity could become the norm in all walks of life. I think that's pretty unlikely in my lifetime. In the meantime, initiatives like Rainbow Boogie and the all-female Telly Takeover weekend are shining examples, to my mind, of what can be achieved with the right attitudes, a little imagination and determination to make everyone feel welcome and valued in skydiving. What can I bring to the board? Well, the practical experience and knowledge I've gained of working in corporate risk management over 25 years will be of particular benefit, I believe. I've worked extensively with major UK and international companies, ranging from Premier League football clubs to charities and everything in between. I have a thorough understanding of business, of executive leadership, of fiscal planning, the practical application of corporate governance, and of course, a director's responsibilities, because any one of us that will be elected will become a director, if so elected. British Skydiving relies extensively on volunteers to function. It also needs to continuously manage and achieve cooperation, collaboration, and consensus between wide-ranging stakeholders, from the CAA and other regulators to instructors, DZ owner-operators, and the membership, of course, to achieve its stated aims. I have experience of developing and monitoring strategic plans, often working with disparate groups with conflicting agendas to accomplish common goals. And I think that's what we have to do every day, or what the British Skydiving has to do every day. Achieving that requires understanding, it requires empathy, persuasion, communication. And these are personal skills I've developed over many years in business, and which I offer to the membership to represent them on council if I'm elected. The the bit about making British skydiving more visible. I can't honestly claim to be an expert on this particular subject, and it's a tricky question for what is essentially a minority sport. Maybe collaboration with larger organisations such as Sport England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland may have some benefits, but I dare say we already have those established relationships with those bodies. I sometimes think we don't do enough with some of the powerful media we have. So something like if we could leverage edited clips of key aspects of something like the national championships, that could be quite powerful. Although I appreciate it's not straightforward to then get that played on media. Mike mentioned the NFTO stuff, but to my mind, it was the coverage of that fantastic win by NFTO was paltry and fleeting compared to many other sports. But we do have to accept that we're a minority sport. I think that membership increasing and retention is a much bigger question than the visibility. I think, how do we get those tandems to move on to becoming members and joining our association? That's the real challenge. I don't know the answers, but I'd be prepared to work and think about it. About the bit about what's important and what influenced my decision. I've seen considerable changes in British skydiving over the years. I've actually been skydiving for years, and I sense there's an aspiration within council to become more relevant, to become more effective, and to become more inclusive. And if I dare say, Craig has led that and has been very mindful of pushing forward those agendas. However, progress is hampered by the limited time and minimal resources available to achieve that, namely the few British skydiving staff that we do have and the worthy volunteers that comprise all of our council and all of the subcommittees. That situation has been further exacerbated with having to deal with a significant number of issues arising this year, which has seriously detracted from the ability of council to push forward with planned initiatives. I've been a ski instructor for many years and feel that British skydiving is a bit behind other sports in our teaching and training programs, particularly for new instructors. I do think we need to invest more time in our instructors and support them with continuous personal development plans or requirements for them to have them throughout their careers. These, I believe, are points that council has as priority, but on which action has been delayed by them having to continuously deal with the crocodile nearest the canoe with limited time and resources available. Hence, as Mike mentioned, we've done a little bit about the coaching, but actually coaching is sort of second stage after we've got people into the sport and got them trained. So to my mind, the crocodile nearest the canoe in that particular instance is how do we improve the instructing? Not knocking any instructors for the current, but I think we as an organisation could make it better for them. I'm a skydiver and a jump pilot. I've benefited from the efforts of others on council and committees over many years. I now have the expertise, the time and the resolve to offer my experience of life, of business, of skydiving to the membership. And I'd like to think that I can work towards clearing the logjam and move British skydiving forward. That's all from me, John.
Thanks, Tony. And so that leads us on to Jason.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Tony. Good evening, everybody. So yes, thanks for the opportunity to speak this evening. I'm going to set my own clock so that I don't run over. Just in order of the questions that have been raised, what do I think I could do, and what can British skydiving do regarding diversity and inclusion? I think this. A lot of people talk about what a diversity means, what inclusion means, and for me, it just means being part of a society that promotes equality, regardless of who or what anybody is, and it's as simple as that. And for me, I think it's a fairly natural process. For me, I don't really need to think about that, but of course, in our society, that isn't sadly the case in every area. So I think skydiving as a sport is a really good leveler, because it does allow members and people who participate to compete on a fairly equal field irrespective of background. But the society, as I said, still has barriers and remnants of an old-fashioned attitude, I think. And I think the way British Skydiving could continue to promote an inclusive attitude, and I use the word continue because I think it already does, is via the way it operates, primarily really by supporting their own staff, by providing appropriate education and training and support. Probably as importantly, really making events both attractive and accessible to people and relevant, and actively supporting those events that are pro-diversity and inclusive, like Tilly Boogie, for example, as I think Tony mentioned earlier. I think British Skydiving's own policy needs to ensure that it remains proactive and up to date, and pro-diversity and inclusion. And it also needs to only work with partners who share those attitudes, those positive attitudes towards diversity and inclusion as well. As importantly as well, the way that British Skydiving communicates with any interested party, again, needs to remain pro-diversity and pro-inclusion. And I think that comes naturally with the right support and the right training for those that work on behalf of British Skydiving, whether they're, whether they're paid or do the work voluntarily, and of course working with the right partners as well. I think the most important thing for me about this particular question is that it's not about doing something to simply tick a box or meet a standard. I think that's the wrong approach. It's about genuinely living and believing in this attitude towards diversity and inclusivity. And I think in our society, sadly, I think there does exist an approach where we simply do it because that's what's expected, and that isn't what I would wish to do. You have to believe in what you're trying to do. Moving to question 2, what can I bring that's unique, and what are my personal and professional qualities? I think I'll probably agree with my previous candidates in that I'm probably not unique, but what I do have is something really been born out of a career in a 35-year career in a professional environment. I've been a chartered professional for 25 of those 35 years, really operating at a senior level in a corporate environment. So I think I'm experienced and can have those transferable skills to be able to operate in that kind of environment, in a professional environment, using skills that I've gained during my career. I can form my own opinions. I'm not scared to do that, and I don't hang off other people's ideas. And I think I can communicate those effectively as well. As importantly, I'm good at listening, and I encourage and welcome a diversity of opinion as well. I've been a member of British Skydiving for 14 years, so I'm, in the words of my original school head, I'm a sticker, not a joiner. So I think that's important. I've been around for 14 years in the sport now. So I'm passionate about the sport. I want to positively contribute and make a difference to skydiving. Sorry, my clock's going off. Apologies. And probably most importantly, I've got a wife who's also a skydiver, which is how we met. So she understands the passion for the sport and supports me in making sure that I can make the time to commit to British Skydiving as part of a busy life as a business owner, a husband, and a father. I've got ideas about how I can bring change to British Skydiving, and I'll talk about those a little bit later. Question 3, in terms of how do I think British Skydiving can be made more visible? There is visibility, I think, at the moment. I think there's always room for improvement, and I think that there definitely is here. I think better use of and promotion of the British Skydiving website would be useful. I don't think it's probably used as much as it could be, or promoted as much as it could be. And I think investing in creating more engaging content would help to attract more people to use that medium as well. Roadshows, I think, are something which could be increased and improved to improve visibility of British Skydiving, but also offer some some betterment in HDZ through these roadshows. And I've been to a few roadshows myself, and I think they're great, but I think there could be more of them. Increased presence at DZs generally by British Skydiving would be good, and maybe if it's possible to actually subsidise events at DZs where that's possible and in the interests of promoting the sport. I think increased and more visible communication on British Skydiving matters through social media would work well. It's the world we live in now, and I think more could be done in that respect. And encouraging members to, through forums, constructively voice opinion and act on the feedback that we get is something that needs to be better as well. Generally, just always really working towards an open-minded, honest and inclusive governance is how I think British Skydiving can continue to evolve, and increasing the visibility, I think, will allow it to do that.
Jason, you've got 2.
Okay, last question. It's probably the biggest one, and I've talked for too long. So, what influenced my decision? I spend time on DZs, and I hear a lot of discussions that happen during the day about British Skydiving and BPA as it was. A lot of people moan about British Skydiving, but they don't do anything about it, and it frustrates me. There is always room for improvement in any business, in every walk of life, but if you're not prepared to try and do something about it, I don't think you should moan about it. And I hear these things being said, and I want to make a positive change and try and address some of those things. The things that really that come into my mind quite quickly are member retention. I know others have mentioned that as well. Speaking from my own experiences and from what I've heard on DZs, member retention is very important, and I want to explore the possibility of a kind of mentor or buddy system across the DZs managed by British Skydiving to try and keep members. A couple of opportunities under the Safety and Training Committee, subsidising and increasing the amount of canopy handling courses across the DZs, and also producing some kind of programme to make available mental health support for any members that feel the need to reach out is another one. Wanted to spend a bit longer on both of those, but I think my time is probably over. So thank you for listening. Thank you, John.
Thanks, Jason. Which takes us on to Kate.
Hi, yes, I'm just going to turn my video off because my reception's not the best here, so I'm hoping you'll hear me better without it on. Okay. So what do I think British Skydiving should be doing regarding diversity and inclusion? So I think some really positive steps in the last few years to improving the role of the organisation in regards to diversity and inclusion, but I still feel like there's a lot of work we can do. I think the Inclusion and Diversity Working Group, and in particular Mary Barrett, has done an amazing job. And we've had some real progress in relation to policies, visual representation on gender and race. I don't want to steal her limelight. She's an amazing human being, and she can tell you a bit more about what she's done in relation to this. Some of the things that I've been proud to be involved in are things like your Uncover Your Potential events. And I did a talk for the Drop Zone owners at the last AGM on visual representation in regards to gender and race. And I've been asked to present that at the USPA Synopsum in February. I think we have missed opportunities, though, to promote some of the amazing things that our drop zones are doing in this area, and sharing their ideas. So some of the examples of this have been visual representation that some of the drop zones are doing on their websites, their inclusivity of their staff. There's one drop zone that's doing tandem briefs in different languages. They have part-time interpreters, and the staff are learning simple phrases in other languages. And then you've got like the Rainbow Women's Boogie as well. So I think we need to promote that more. For me, the work that British Skydiving need to progress to in regards to diversity and inclusion, I think we've got a lot of work to still do in regards to disability, both in regards to physical disability and mental health. I feel like there's still some real barriers to progression in this area, and I feel like some of that comes from fear. I don't think it comes from intentional discrimination, but out of fear, risk and perceived risk. So there's some world-class examples of instructors such as Hans from PD, who specialise in taking tandem students with disabilities. He's done over 500. And I think we need to learn from people like him and support our instructors and our CIs with resources and more training in this area. There's also modifications for kit that's licensed with manufacturers that we don't accept in the UK, and they offer opportunities for more people to access our sport. A current project that I'm working on at the moment is a tandem brief in sign language, because I think we need to improve the inclusivity for disabilities. I also think that we do have this perceived risk, this thing of risk when it comes to disability. So if you look at the evidence, as a female, as a woman, I am more prone to being injured in sport, any sport I do. I'm more at risk of injuring myself in basketball, in skydiving, and that comes from physiological factors. That comes from my bone density, from my ligament laxity, from my pelvis alignment. But that doesn't mean just because there's higher risk that we stop women playing sport or we stop women skydiving. That would be seen as discriminatory. So it's looking for me at how we reduce that risk and be inclusive. I also don't think we're that inclusive when it comes to attracting instructors in the sport from certain areas. For example, teachers, we could be amazing instructors, but we very, very rarely put on courses that are out of term time, which means that they can't apply to become skydiving. I think we need to be inclusive when we look at things like that as well. What can you bring to the board that is unique? I don't think I have anything that's unique. I think I'm lucky that I work part-time in the sport. So I have a knowledge of working in the sport. I have a good understanding of competitions, good understanding of, I have a lot of friends who are drop zone owners who talk to me about what's important to them, but I also have a job as a physiotherapist in an environment where we have to continuously develop. We have to use professional development all the time. We have to work on evidence-based reasoning. So I think that helps with my role on council. I think as a person, I'm quite open and honest, and I'm not shy when it comes to challenging the status quo. I'm very persistent and determined, and I don't give up very easily if I think it's something that's worth fighting for or it's the moral right thing to do. I'm not shy in bringing up topics and having conversations that might make some people feel uncomfortable and are not necessarily pleasant conversations, but that all organisations need to have. So those around mental health, addictions and sexual abuse. I think I cause a lot of headaches for British Skydiving staff at times, but I think it comes from a good place. If elected, how do you think British Skydiving can be made more visible? I feel that we miss out on pushing positive publicity and free publicity of our sport. All the opportunities that I've been involved with and have seen come recently are coming from individuals rather than coming from the governing body. So the BBC News on Marcus the other day didn't come from us promoting that came directly from him. The stuff I've done with the One Show, Blue Peter, the stuff that NFTO did, none of that's come from the organisation. And I think there's a real role there that British Skydiving has to have some sort of media correspondence to show that we're actively reaching out and publicising our sport. I also feel like we need to be more visible to the members. So Craig's been doing some excellent Q&A sessions, and I think we can improve that and do more with various members of staff and council to promote our visibility to members. What's influenced my decision to run for council and what current issues are most important? Okay, how long have I got?
You're okay at the moment.
Okay. So I've chosen to run again because I've spent the last 3 years putting a lot of time and effort into promoting positive change and influences into British skydiving. And although I haven't achieved most of what I've set out for various reasons, I want to finish what I've started, and I want to see all the good work that's being done behind the scenes at the moment by all the council be actioned. And I feel that the organisation's at a point in time where there's this huge opportunity in the near future for British skydiving to move forward into a new era and to progress the sport into where I feel it should be. And progress at a lot faster pace than we've ever done before, and I'd love to be part of this chapter if it goes the way I hope it will. In regards to the specific things, I'm really passionate about DBS checks. I've been trying for 3 years to try and get DBS checks through for being mandatory for our instructors, especially those working with children and young and vulnerable adults. I think we're one of the only national governing bodies that doesn't DBS check our instructors, and I'm really passionate about protecting our members, and we need to learn from what's happened in other sports. So I feel we need to address this. Also, it's stopping us getting a lot of funding applications, because that's part of the criteria for some of the funding, and that's stopping us getting grants that we could benefit our members. As some of you might know, I'm quite involved with the Uplift charity, so I'm quite passionate about mental health, safety and addictions. And I think British Skydiving has a huge more role that they can play in that. So at the moment, I'm quite keen on lobbying British Skydiving in regards to the medicals, because I have serious concerns that instructors and members are not seeking professional help for mental health conditions, including eating disorders, because of the risk of losing their job or their hobby because of the wording that's currently in our medicals. And I also think we're losing great instructors, because if anyone's got a history of an eating disorder or a mental health problem, it's more than likely going to stop them being an instructor because of the wording of what we have. So if you look at the CA medical for being a pilot, you can get a medical if you've got a history of an eating disorder or a stable depression, but you can't get a medical for being a tandem instructor. I think the courses still have a lot of work. Again, it's something that I failed to do this year to progress them. In the last 3 years, I've worked really hard, but I do genuinely believe in the next year it's something that can change. I think we definitely need marking criteria and syllabus and standardisation, just some of the bare minimum that you'd expect in any other organisation, any other sector of work or life where you're responsible for someone's health and safety. I'm also quite passionate about drug and alcohol policies. I think there's been one in place in Australia and New Zealand since 2012, so I feel like we're 10 years behind that. And I think the main purpose of that is to provide education and support, but it also improves safety to members and the public. And I'm keen on 2 minutes, cool. So tandem safety, again, I'm trying to push to get tandem canopy courses, because I think that's the biggest thing for safety for our tandem instructors and our students. And by doing that, if we can reduce the risk of injuries and reduce the injuries that happen, it will reduce the membership cost in our insurance premiums. So I think that's something I'm quite passionate about as well. And then my main thing is that, more importantly than anything, I want our members to be proud of the organisation. And if I'm elected, that's going to be my main aim. That's me done.
Thank you very much. And that takes us on to Mary.
Thank you, John. Like Craig and Kate, I'm currently a director on the board, and I'm restanding. And I want to say thank you to Kate and Craig for sort of giving a heads up to my passion for equality and diversity and the work that's been done. And I was quite pleased when I saw that was the first question. It gives me a nice way in, I think. So what do I think British Skydiving should be doing about diversity and inclusion within the sport? Well, firstly, I believe that we as a community need to acknowledge that inclusion, diversity and equality within the sport does require not just attention, but ongoing attention, and that we need to move beyond that idea or any ideas of finding one thing that will fix the issues that we have in this area. There is no magic fix. And I'm really confident that British Skydiving as an association already recognises this. And as Kate and Craig have already alluded to, the association has made some really significant progress on this over the last few years in terms of stepping up to our written policies, and meaning that these aren't just commitments that are in writing, but are actually things that are being led at the top of the association. So that has included, for example, setting up a subcommittee that focuses on maintaining that kind of finger on a pulse and implementing initiatives around inclusion, diversity and equality. It's very much a case of a big plan that is made up of some significant ambition alongside small wins along the way. So, for example, that's included going back through all of the association's forms to make sure that the language that's used across those outward facing documents reflects our values in terms of equality and diversity and inclusion. And I think for me, the biggest thing has been seeing the association set up a subcommittee whose task is looking at those things and setting those initiatives up. And I'm really pleased to be the current chair of that subcommittee. I feel that it's a really big achievement for the association. There are two key things, I think, that I would like to see happen now to keep that drive forward. One is that we get better at listening to our less well represented members, that we make space for those voices within the association and really push consultation in that area. And also making sure that we continue having the right mix of voices on the subcommittee. I feel very confident that the progress that has been made has been because of the mix of voices that have been driving it, rather than because of any one individual. And we have had a fantastic group of people that have stepped forward for that subcommittee. And we need to make sure that that energy continues and we keep that diversity. The subcommittee is a good place for getting into some of the sort of nitty gritty of these issues. And that's really what's been driving all that progress. So moving on to the second question. I think everybody else has said the same thing that I'm about to. I don't see myself having anything terribly unique. I share the same passion for the sport that I'm sure everyone else here does. But I am able to set that passion aside and take a really clear and impartial approach to really big, challenging issues. And I think that's a real strength that I bring. I also have a really high appetite for change. I really find it incredibly rewarding to be working towards positive change and see that happening. I also have a very flexible attitude, and I'm a very proactive person. I think it was Jason who said about not just moaning about something, but doing something, and that's very much sort of in my nature. I also have some very strong communication skills, which comes from my professional life. And also a very long history of parenting multiple children. So I'm also very good at listening. And I think that approach to change, being flexible, being supportive of change and being proactive with good communication skills are all things that we really need on the board right now as the association goes through some really significant changes. Question 3, if elected, how do I think British skydiving can be made more visible? And again, I'm going to echo really what several other people have said. I don't think it's just about more visibility, but it's the right kind of visibility and in the right places, and understanding how we want the association and the sport to be seen. So we had quite a drive, I think it was 2020, we ran a photography competition which focused on the representation of females in our sport. And that was really an acknowledgement that we wanted to change the way that the sport was being visually represented. And I think there's a lot more we can do there in terms of how the sport is represented both internally and externally. I think from what I've seen, a key point is making the passion visible rather than things like the wins and the gold medals. Something that is key to our sport is the passion that it inspires in people. And I think that's what we need to make visible. But if I'm honest, this really isn't my field. And I'm really glad that the association now has a communications officer, because I think we really do need an individual who steps up and takes responsibility for really pioneering this part of our sport. As technology changes, we really need to be making the most of new incentives. So one thing that I've been part of trialling across this year has been using live streaming from our national championships as a way to keep abreast with those new possibilities in terms of visibility. So I have been working with others, including the communications officer, to try and drive those kind of initiatives. I'm not an expert in them, but I'm very much behind them. And then the fourth question, what current issue is most important to me? I don't feel I bring a real concern with one issue. For me, it's much more about driving positive change. And again, feeling that I'm really passionate about skydiving, and therefore I don't just want to be sort of on the sidelines of it, but I want to be doing what I can to keep driving it forward in a really positive way. I've had coming to the end of my 3 years on the board, and I have got a lot out of it. And I felt that I have been part of that driving the association forward. And I feel there is a good deal more that I can do. And I still have a lot of energy for doing it. That's me.
Thanks, Mary. Thanks very much. And now then, moving to James Convoy.
Thank you. Firstly, apologies. I didn't realise my microphone had changed over to my USB mic. I thought I was still on my headset and on mute. So thank you for whoever muted me. I'll dive straight in for the questions. Regarding diversity and inclusion, I'll be honest, this isn't something I've had a lot of exposure to in my life, personally or professionally. And whenever I don't know how to do something, I always look for more information first and engage an expert where necessary. And understand that British Skydiving already has policies, procedures, processes and working group in place. And I imagine they're looking at the issues and working on solutions already. So I can't really contribute to specific knowledge on that subject, but I do listen to people and I pay attention. So I've thought quite hard about this and what I already know around the subject and what I've seen within skydiving. And I realised I've seen the same situation at 2 different drop zones. I noticed them handled completely differently. The first time I noticed it, I was talking to a tandem instructor after they'd given a safety brief, and they said to me, my one doesn't know English, and they've got no idea what I've just said, and they're not going to know what to do when we get up there. We chatted for a bit, and he kind of concluded that they'd done their bit, and that was all they could do, and there was nothing that could be changed. And I don't know whether that's changed since I noticed this, but a different drop zone, I saw the same situation again, tandem brief, they didn't speak English, but this time there was a QR code on the wall and there was a link to a translated tandem safety video on YouTube. And I thought that's just such a simple solution to a problem. And you know, why isn't it done everywhere? So what can British Skydiving do? I think that we can encourage people to engage in the sport, and they can work together and share knowledge. And specifically about the challenges, the things that they've seen and how they've addressed them, and build on those ideas so that we can all improve together. And we're all facing the same situation, the same problems. And if someone's got a solution for it somewhere, if we all take on that solution and somebody else somewhere else has got a different solution to a different problem, and we all take that on, we can all grow and get better together. And of course, improving the policies that we have got, review is a very important thing, and mostly taking action and making those small changes that make things easier for different people to enjoy our support as well, and encourage them to come back. It comes down to the member retention that I know a lot of people have spoken about already, and really stay in the sport and feel included. And this is really what we're trying to achieve. So what brings me, what's unique about me? I think the same as everybody else. I'm unique in the same way everyone else is unique. But talking about my attributes, I think one of my strongest attributes really is the ability to solve complex problems. I think I've got relevant career experience to bring to this role. I'm not going to talk about that. You can read it in my candidate profile if you're interested. And I think there's a lot of strong candidates here with a lot of strong career history. So I'm going to talk more about me generally. I've got a garage full of tools for a huge range of different tasks, and when I can understand a situation that exists and identify how that situation needs to be changed for whatever outcome I want, I can then work out how to do it. And I think anything's possible with sufficient resource, planning and motivation. So if you're motivated to do something, you can definitely do it. And if you can tool up and crack on with it, you can get the job done. And I think working with teams of people is very similar. Everyone brings their abilities to the group in the same way you can bring a toolbox full of tools, and you can use those abilities to plan and use the resources you've got available to make a solution to a problem and then tool up and get the job done. I have a hard time turning down a challenge, and I hate to get defeated. So I would say I'm a highly constructive and dependable member of a team. So that's what I bring to the role. If elected, how do I think British Skydiving can make more visible? Well, I think we can try harder with our online presence to reach new people, absolutely. But I think it's more around the accessibility of that information that's available. If you Google Skydiving UK, and that's probably what an outsider's going to do rather than British Skydiving, they're going to Google Skydiving UK, and the website is the third link down, which is not brilliant for search terms. And secondly, Facebook, social media. If you've read through that thread, it's all about nationals, championships, the expo, AGM, big ways, elections, things like that. It's all totally inward facing, and there's very little for new starters and non-members to actually relate to. So if we had one page, for instance, for members, and then a general page for British Skydiving marketing, we could do better to meet those two different groups of people and attract more members in that way. The British Skydiving website is actually fairly good in comparison to the Facebook for non-members. If you get all the way down to the third link and actually click on it, but the find a PTO. You kind of need to know what PTO stands for. Why doesn't it just say drop zone? And it sort of makes people feel perhaps intimidated straight away because they can't really relate to the language that's being used. And similarly for members, if you look at the information in the website, most of the forms and the real sort of the wisdom and the knowledge is stored in PDFs, which is a digital representation of a form that's supposed to be printed out and put into a filing cabinet, which we probably don't really have many of nowadays. And I found myself on different drop zones, like appearing at my phone and trying to read them. So I would think that we can review our online presence from the perspective of a new start, trying to boost the appeal to the outsiders and non-members. What is most important to you in influencing the decision to run for council? So the catalyst really was the article in the mag and asking for people to fill the casual vacancies. I like to help where I can, and I don't like to ignore a call to arms. So I read the role description. I think I'm a fairly good fit for the requirements, as I said, and So I responded, and here I am. In terms of what is important to me, I'd say there's two issues here specifically. The first is the helping new members to progress and stay engaged in the sport, which I think is very important. And the second is our collective responsibility as an organisation of members. So with progression and retention first, when I did my AFF, I spent a lot of time sitting around a drop zone, as many people do on the weekends, waiting for weather holds. And most of the time I actually sat alone because skydiving is very cliquey. If you haven't noticed, you've got different disciplines, people hang out in their groups, and you normally only hang out with other students. So you can't learn as much from other students as you could from an experienced buddy. And I know a couple of guys have already suggested this. I think it's a brilliant idea. And I like the idea of a buddy system for students because coaches and instructors are often too busy to see everyone. And if you've got like general questions around kind of where to go, what to do, who to talk to, how to buy a rig, things like that, it's much easier if you've got a buddy, someone to show you around, hang around with on site, answer questions, or at least point you in the right direction when you need an instructor. Generally make you feel welcomed and more included, and you're more inclined to come back if you are. So there's much you can learn from a buddy, and it's much easier than students learning from each other because you tend to develop bad habits and things like that. I prefer the term buddy to mentor because it sounds a lot more fun and a lot less like work. And I'm sure different drop zones have got different ways to approach this. And I think we can do more as British Skydiving to perhaps standardize that and make it a little bit more formal, but specifically to collect the data of why those people stop coming back. You haven't seen your buddy for a while, but they could be just texted, hey, is there a problem? Is there something I can help with? And perhaps if we were to track that information, we could then start targeting our actions to work out what we can do to improve that. My second point.
You have two.
Thank you. So my second point is about the level of emissions that we are all collectively responsible for. And I don't mean just the planes, the facilities, the travel to the drop zone. I myself drive 3.5 hours south to get to a drop zone from Glasgow. And particularly catering on some drop zones, let's face it, compared to other sports, it's a bit shameful. The energy use, the use of disposable plates, boxes, cutlery, cups, it's just outrageous. While I'm talking about catering and the environment, I think it's worth mentioning also inclusion, that a lot of drop zones don't have vegetarian and vegan options, and tying this back to inclusivity, it's like, well, we're not really even including food for people to eat when they get to drop zones. So I'm sure there's an awful lot we can do to make the sport more sustainable, and I want to see that happen. And I'd like the sport to get a better image, and I think that's going to attract more environmentally conscious people to the sport, and indeed keep them coming back and get that warm, fuzzy feeling that we're actually not being awful for the environment and everyone around us in the sport that everybody loves. That's me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And that takes us on to Carl.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for your time. So I'm going to start with the first question about diversity and inclusion. This is a topic I'm really passionate about, and it's something I've been involved in my entire career. I do believe, as with every organisation, there's more we can do to be more diverse and inclusive. Growth in this area would enable diverse thinking, foster greater innovation, and really grow our participation in this sport. For the last 12 years, I've worked with Sainsbury's to really drive forwards their D&I agenda. I was one of the first to introduce a prayer room into one of my stores, and I think we should support an initiative for drop zones to review this, because I think it'll be a really valuable addition for our members and guests. I organised Sainsbury's first Pride event in Bolton, and it was great to see Rainbow Boogie at Tilstock. I think we should really encourage more of these events across the country. I've mentored ethnically diverse colleagues and managers throughout my career, and I've really seen the benefit and progression this unlocks. And I really think we could do more with this with British skydiving development events. I do think we need to listen to our current ethnically diverse members, ask them what more we could do to help and grow our diverse membership pool. And I believe we should really encourage and grow diverse role models within the sport, and these can really contribute to a truly inclusive sport. Moving on to the second question, what's unique about me? It's a difficult question to answer. So I'm a commercial senior leader in retail. My skills are in optimizing business performance at pace and scale. I've got the privilege of leading 500 colleagues and managers at the moment in a really competitive and challenging environment. And I really want to use this knowledge and experience to help strengthen British skydiving financially and enable us to support more of our members. In terms of unique attributes I can bring to the board, I've got an in-depth knowledge and relationship with potential future corporate sponsorship partners for us, particularly in the food and drink industry. And I believe this will give us a platform and funding to grow our membership and reach in the UK and abroad. I've been involved in the development and success of social media strategies, starting from a very low base and growing over a number of years. So I know the challenges in developing this area. One of the ideas I came up with is I created customer influencers at Sainsbury's. So these were people that created engaging and exciting content which helped grow the brand. And this is an area I think we can develop. I chair a number of boards at Sainsbury's focusing on great place to work and safety. Through these committees, I advocate keeping the customer at the heart of our business and ensuring safe working practices are current and adhered to. I'm also the managing director of a property firm that focuses on the environment and providing environmentally friendly rental properties, which is something I'm really passionate about. And I believe British skydiving really needs to consider our future ways of working as we move towards a more carbon neutral future. So these are the skills and qualities I would like to bring to the board if successful in gaining this role. So moving on to the next question, if elected, how can I think British skydiving can be more visible? So this issue is the main reason I've applied for the role. I believe British skydiving has huge potential to grow and develop, and visibility is a key issue for us, particularly in the digital environment. I think social media channels need to be embraced. We need to create more exciting and engaging content to really drive visibility and new membership growth. If we look at our current channels, so TikTok has 0 followers and no content. We've only got 1,400 followers on Instagram and only 2,800 subscribers to YouTube. So if we really grow the followers of these channels, we'll greatly increase our visibility and help grow our membership base, particularly in our younger generations, which I think is really key to the future success of our organisation. I believe we need to establish British skydiving influencers for each drop zone. So these people would create exciting and engaging content for British skydiving, which we could share through our social media channels. I also believe it'd be great to hold an annual British skydiving festival. I've seen these take place in other countries. We could host them at different drop zones each year, and this would really help promote our organisation that we're in and work for. So moving on to the final question, what current issues is really important to me? So the main reason I applied is the decline in membership numbers and the low amount of members we have. I couldn't believe that it was down at one point to just over 4,000. I thought we had a lot more members than that, and that's what's influenced me to apply for this council. Our membership base doesn't match how exciting and exhilarating our sport is, and I think we have great potential to unlock this. I believe we have a sport which brands would love to invest in and work with, and this would really help us grow and develop as an organisation. So what's most important to me is ensuring the long-term success and sustainability of the sport we all love to participate in. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carl. And I think that moves us on to John.
Thank you very much, John. Thank you very much, everyone, for your time this evening. So I'm going to jump straight into this, really, into the first question, which is why do I feel that British skydiving could be doing in regard to diversity and inclusion within the sport? I think we'd be remiss to not to make a real sort of pat on the back for the existing councils and the progress that's been made in this space, specifically in the achievements of NFTO for being absolutely incredible ambassadors to our sport on the world stage for women, not just in skydiving, but sport in general. If we look at the work that's been done at Tilstock with both the women's events and then also the Rainbow Boogie. And if we look at some of the other initiatives that are sort of looking like they're gaining momentum, as Mary's mentioned, but it doesn't go far enough, and it doesn't really go deep enough, is the brutal, honest answer. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to look around the drop zone and to see that the BAME communities in our sport is massively underrepresented, and there has to be a reason for that. And I can't think that it's not that we're good people, because the thing that makes me skydive is that we are welcoming, we are kind, we are compassionate, and we are highly energetic people. So I don't understand where that problem's coming in. And I only see that we can fix things like this is adopting strategies similar to British cycling, British judo, UK sport, by having a clearly defined strategy with time-bounded deliverable goals. If you don't have that direction of travel set, and it doesn't need to be a sprint, it just needs to be a commitment to forward change. As Craig alluded to, you're not going to be able to reinvent the wheel overnight. You can't U-turn a direction of anything instantly. And I think that we really have to recognize the limitations of changing direction and creating change. And we have to celebrate the little wins. To do this, I think that little things that have been mentioned as well is I was involved with the COVID Return to Skydiving working group. I was included because I'm actually clinically vulnerable. I shielded for most of that time. I was somebody that had an opinion that could be really valuable to that conversation. And I was invited as an ordinary member. And I think that we need to do much, much more of this to get the opinions of people that can answer the question, why they have stayed, why are there people that have left? If we know someone that's no longer doing the sport, why have you left? And asking and getting those answers to those questions are really important. There are no silver bullets in this space. They only exist in horror movies, to be perfectly honest. It's going to be little changes, incremental steps forward, and a real commitment to that change and defined by everyone. Because I don't think there's many of us that don't agree that we want more people in the sport. We love it. We know what we can offer everyone in it. And I think that's the perspective we need to do that. And other initiatives exist out there that we can piggyback onto. You know, we don't have to do this all ourselves. There are people out there that have the expertise, the subject matter experts in this that can give us resources. And I think we have to remember that if we aren't SMEs, to ask for help. We're all human and we all have our limitations in life. moving into that, I think, I'm not as modest enough as some of the other people to say I'm not unique, because I think anyone that's known me is that I am one of a kind. But the skills that I can bring, obviously, everyone here has got professional experience. I think that's one of the things that I've often been frustrated with skydiving is that typically you have people that are excellent skydivers and really well intentioned, but don't necessarily have the technical capabilities or necessarily the experience to be able to do that. And so to see the people, then the company that I'm keeping with in this meeting this evening actually is really refreshing for me, because many times I've been looking at the candidacy forms and thinking I should run, and time hasn't allowed me to, so I haven't. With that in mind, obviously, I have to tell you who I am and what I'm about. And I have written a slight account. So I'm a semi-qualified accountant, which means that I'm a chartered certified accountant. I hold an MBA, which is a Master's in Business Administration. I'm ex-military, and I also hold a Information Security Master's on top of that. I've worked for SMEs, including in safeguarding, which I'll come to in a few moments, and also multinational large-scale corporations ranging in small one-to-one teams, managing people offshore globally, managing people locally, distance, etc. Further to that, I've also been the former Vice Chair of British University Skydiving, and then also the Chair of British University Skydiving, which is the university group that essentially represent all of the university clubs throughout the United Kingdom, and gives them a governing body and framework to support them through things. I think one of the things that I can massively bring to the committee is that constructively challenging the status quo, not walking past standards that I wouldn't accept, because as soon as you walk past it, it's the standard you choose to accept. That is the level that is okay. Too often people have obviously tried to come into council. They've tried to affect change instantly. They've tried to really quickly implement fundamental change, but in an inconstructive way. And it does nothing but entrench existing points of view. It upsets people. It becomes personal at that point. And that's not the way to do it. You have to really break things down and have a conversation. And if it's done that way for a reason, challenge it not with a no, that's wrong, but why? Understand that. But more importantly, I think this moving into the next stage of visibility is explaining why things are done that way, because we have a two-faceted problem with visibility. You have both the external visibility of people not within our community and the internal visibility of people within the community. And internally, we have a massive problem with the membership being disenfranchised with what British Skydiving do. We all know what the anagram people say with the initials of BS, and it's not a positive image. It isn't. People don't see value to what is being offered. I think the point of being an insurance broker is one that's been massively, one that I've felt at times. What does British Skydiving do for me? And I think that we can fix that simply by being transparent and being frequently transparent with that. Things like having this live stream, things like implementing committee meetings being live streamed, if not live streamed due to conflicts or issues with confidentiality, having minutes published through social media challenges in an expedient manner. You know, we have a media officer. We need to utilize that capability and that reach. We need to make sure that things such as STC riggers are massively published. That way, people who have an interest in those or who don't even know they have an interest in those fields can feel more included. We need to obviously look at wider environment we operate. We are part of the Royal Aero Club. There are other people in our space who we can speak to, such as British Hang Gliding Association, BHPA, British Gliding Association, who we can work with more closely and collaboratively resource with, which is something I think we need to look at a lot more, which then on the wider stage impacts how we interact and people deal with us. When we look at the external, the actions of people like Marcus Smith being on media, when we look at the actions of NFTO, this massively changes people's view of this as not just being people as a once in a lifetime thing of that you do this for a tandem, but you do this actually as a hobby, which I think a lot of people, when people ask, you know, oh, you skydive, how was your first tandem? If you didn't do a tandem, most people are shocked. Most people don't understand that the route into skydiving is this. We don't speak about that. We don't advertise outwardly, come and have a go. We don't look at round drop zones, local advertising on radio, local media. It's a relatively affordable way of doing so. There isn't a national strategy of outward advertising because of, for whatever reason, disenfranchisation from various parties. But if we could collaboratively pool that resource, search engine optimization for when we go into our websites and things, I think that is part of the visibility to make sure people know where we are.
John, you have to.
The reason why I wanted to kind of join council, and I did hum and ah whether I was going to bring this up, but I want to turn this around, not necessarily an issue that's more important to me, but it should be important for everyone. For far too long, our sport has had a problem creating safe spaces in our community for people who do not necessarily have to ask many people around you to find people who have been made to feel uncomfortable, harassed, or uncomfortable on a drop zone. Kate mentioned that she believes that people should be DBS, and I think that is fundamentally a minimum requirement in our sport. As a former safeguarding leader of a national youth organisation and also safeguarding director for a company called Educare, the fact that we don't have mandatory safeguarding training to protect people in this organisation and this association is shameful. I was chair, like I say, for British University Skydiving for quite a long time, and the fact that the amount of disclosures that are made on a monthly basis of people, we all know the people in a bar that we shouldn't go talking to, that have to be watched, the people that, you know, make people uncomfortable, and it is wrong. And for too long, we're not talking about it. It's not open and centre, and I didn't know whether or not to speak about this, but it's the reason I'm running, because it can't carry on. We need to address it, we need to talk about it, and it needs to be front and centre. And I think enough time has gone by with people not. Thank you.
Thank you. Which takes us to James Rand.
Hi everybody, thanks John. So I'll get straight onto it. So what do we do about diversity and inclusion? So obviously everyone should be able to bring their best self to skydiving. You know, it shouldn't be skydiving, it should be life, right? Everyone should be able to be their best self. You know, people come to skydiving from all walks of life to enjoy our sport. It's one of the best parts. You know, although we sit around and well, we skydive, but we sit around and socialise, you know, gob off on the plane more than we do actually skydiving. So people should be forefront and centre of our sort of thinking. Obviously, some great work's already been done by Mary and her team, you know, with the code of practice, the equality and diversity policies. So now that they're in place, I mean, they should be a minimum of by sort of, you know, that's just normal. So we just need to make people feel welcome, and that starts with the leaders in the sport, isn't it? So our instructors and our coaches, and we need to be holding each other to account. And making sure that we are, you know, where we do fall short, you know, making sure that we've got a robust process and like making sure that people are, you know, held accountable to those processes in an open and honest way. So making sure that people can grow and feel safe within skydiving. So what do I bring to the board that's unique? Yeah. Well, I guess I am unique, but but yeah. What's my professional qualities? You know, so I work in risk, and the key part for me is influencing other people. It's making sure that we've got the right people in the right place, doing the right things to get the best outcome for everyone. And so that's not just from the board. We've got like a massively diverse membership. And I think we should capitalise on that, bring people in who've got skills within the membership who can help and shape our membership and our base to sort of grow British skydiving. If I was elected, how do we make British skydiving more visible? I mean, we already shout about our achievements and our competitions, you know, on a national level and on a global level. You know, we go out and compete, but when we speak to new skydivers or tandem students, they're sort of surprised that there's even a sport around it. You know, they're like, "What? You do this, you know, all the time, every day?" So we need to publicise our sport, but it's not just as an extreme sport. It's something that is accessible to everybody and anybody. You know, we can make reasonable adjustments, you know, for practically anybody to come and enjoy skydiving. And it is about the people that I think brings people and keeps people in skydiving. So if we can convey that to people, you know, who come and do a tandem and come and do a first jump with us, then we're gonna make it more visible. You know, word of mouth will make it grow. What's the current issues that's most important to me? In reality, I think it's just the image of British skydiving within the membership. I think Jason sort of alluded to it. People, I don't know, for some reason don't like British skydiving, but nobody steps forwards. So that's me stepping forward now to try and shape the future of the organisation and take it to the next level. So that's me, John.
Okay, thank you, James. So that exhausts the list, other than Wes Gust, who was on my list. Does anybody know whether he did turn up or no? Nobody can.
It's not on the list of participants on the right.
No.
So that means he is not going to be here or attend, which therefore brings me to the end of the process. You've got the opportunity now of chatting or drinking or doing whatever you want to do on nearly to the end of the week. Think whether if there's anything else we can help you with or anything else you want to know. Not saying that I could answer them, but before we turn down, is there anything that anybody wants to say?
Yeah, I'd like to ask a question, John.
Yeah.
Just for those members who are watching. When it comes to the voting, there's obviously 5 positions up for election this time. Will each member get the chance to vote for 5 candidates, I presume?
You'd have to ask the staff who run this. I think I'm a lawyer who specialises in election law, but I haven't actually come across something quite like this before. So,
lawyers are nice people too, don't worry.
Oh, really? I've never found that out to be the case, but still, there we are.
Perfect.
Thank you.
I just
John, if I may interrupt there, I can answer that. I can answer that question.
Definitely.
So, Mike, the answer to that is yes. People will be given the opportunity to vote for up to 5 candidates. Anything more than 5 candidates, and their vote will be classed as spoiled. So, a maximum of 5 candidates.
Thanks for clarifying this.
Just a point, as I'm sure everyone else would. The members obviously haven't had a chance to ask us questions here. I'm sure everyone on this call would absolutely invite people to contact us directly to ask anything that they feel would be appropriate to be asked of anybody, reflecting how we would represent the members moving forward.
Do you mind if I ask a question? It's really one on the date that the voting becomes available and the date that closes. It's perhaps something I should know as a member anyway, but I'm afraid I don't, so I'm being honest. Anybody, can you answer that one, Lisa?
Yes, so the vote will open on the 6th of January, right, and will close 2 weeks later.
2 weeks later, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Is that it then? Is that the business of the evening done? Seems like it. So on that basis, thank you for being such a good crowd to work with. It's been very enjoyable for me and I've learned an awful lot, so thanks for that.
John, there is a hand up. Sorry, it's Craig.
All right. Craig, yes, I can see it now.
Sorry, just to pick up in terms of the voting, Lisa is correct. 5 positions being voted for, because it's most people will be voting electronically. It's very difficult, if not impossible, to spoil your vote, although there will be a small number who request a postal ballot that could potentially spoil their vote on, but the vast majority is internet based. That's unlikely. And just to say that 3 of the roles come from the rolling term tenure for the candidates that are up for a re-election. So myself, Mary, and Kate, who've been on for 3 years, and we're putting ourselves forward for another 3 years. The other 2 positions are casual vacancies, so they are resulting from resignations of previous council members, and their terms are reduced. They will just be for the remaining terms of those positions. That is in order to balance the turnover of the board, so that we ideally only ever have 3 people up for election at any one time, so we don't have the potential for the whole board to be renewed.
So I have a question that stems from that. In the event that you, Mary or Kate, don't get elected, how will you select which of the other people who do get elected are forming a rolling area there? And how do you balance? Because it could be that you guys do get elected, but, you know, for one reason or another, you don't get the largest share of the vote. Has that been agreed? Who's going to get the casual vacancies? Who's going to get the rolling vacancies? I think that needs to be defined. In the past, it has been on a votes basis. So the top 3 votes will get the full term votes, and then below that will be divided into the lesser terms, or the remaining casual.
Actually, if I could just interject there, Craig, one of the casual vacancies is also for the full 3 years. So the first 4 with the highest number of votes will come onto council for the full 3 years, and the 5th one will come on for just 1 year.
Thank you, Lisa. We had discussed this, and you had already told me that, so I apologise for my mistake. It's just that when we were trying to fill the casual vacancies, we did have 2. That one of those is timed out this year. So Lisa is correct. It's 4 3-year terms and 1 casual vacancy, which I believe is 1 year left. Is that correct, Lisa?
Yes, it is 1 year.
Thanks for clarifying, Lisa.
And is that the end of business then? Okay, I'm going to take that as it is. So enjoy the rest of your evening, and I'll watch on with interest.
Thank you. Thanks very much, everyone.
You, John.
Have a good night.
Thanks, everyone.
Good luck, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Good luck.